Cruz hung in there for the third thing. Why don't you mention number 2 and number 3 again? You had to hurry, number 2.
Sure. Well, look, this week is the week that the Senate will decide. This vote will be Friday or Saturday. And the only reason we got to where we are is because the American people have risen up in incredible numbers. We've seen over 1.6 million people sign the national petition at don'tfundit.com. That is why the House voted last week to defund Obamacare. You know, for weeks, everyone in Washington said they wouldn't do it, this would never happen, they would never fight this fight on the continuing resolution, but the American people rose up in enormous numbers. And so what I would say is, listen, at this stage in the fight, the fight is in the people's hands, and if we want to change Washington and get Republicans to listen, get Democrats to listen, what has to happen is I would urge every one of your listeners to go to don'tfundit.com to sign the national petition, number 1. Number 2, to pick up the phone, call their senators and tell them, vote no on cloture, stand strong on defunding Obamacare.
Would I be correct in pointing out that this has been your objective all along? You really do believe that the people of this country can affect change. You believe that the system is designed for this ability to exist, and that's all you're trying to do. You're not trying to overthrow Washington. You're not trying to upset the apple cart. You're not trying to rewrite anything. You just want the citizens to get involved and let their voice have and be the power it can be, correct?
That is exactly right, and it's the only way to change Washington. I mean, at the end of the day, look, I think some of the reason you've seen the unhappiness is by going to the people. We're basically appealing to the senator's boss, to my boss. I've got 26 million bosses. And if the American people stand up and light up the phones, light up Twitter, light up Facebook, light up email, and if elected senators hear from enough of their constituents, I promise you it gets their attention. And even those who don't want to stand and fight, all that has to happen is it has to get politically more risky to do the wrong thing than to do the right thing, and suddenly the numbers change in a big, big way. That's what happened in the House. The Senate's going to be harder.
Well, it's been done in 2007. The people rose up and stopped immigration reform in that summer. And what was pretty powerful then, Senator, because the Republicans at that point, we had a Republican president who was in favor of the immigration reform that was in the legislation. They had to go along with him, but it was the first time that they hadn't. The people rose up. It can be done.
Rush, you're exactly right. We saw it in 2007 on immigration. We saw it this year on drones. We saw it this year on guns. We saw it this year on Syria. When the people rise up, the politicians listen. Now, this fight, the politicians are dug in more. In the Senate, they're really entrenched, and so it's got to be a grassroots tsunami. So I would urge folks, don't just sign the petition. If you really want to change Washington, let me ask everyone listening, and there is no radio audience like your audience, Rush. Let me ask everyone listening, find 3 people this week to sign that petition and call their senators. If everyone listening to your show did that, it would shut down the Senate switchboards, and it would focus the minds and attention of senators. They wouldn't be happy about it, but it would focus them like nothing else, and it would help change Washington so we listen to the people, which is what we should be doing in the first place.
I'll tell you, the conventional wisdom is that Reed's got his votes, that there's no way that this is ever going to happen. That even if the Senate did vote the way you want them to, Obama's going to veto it. There's just no way that you can actually realize the outcome that you want here.
Well, that's because virtually nobody in Washington believes it's possible to win the argument for the American people, to persuade, to move people. I think if the American people get engaged at sufficient numbers, first we unify Republicans on this vote, then we move red state Democrats. Listen, once we unify Republicans, if we can get 46, or all we need is 41 Republicans, then the phones light up on Mark Pryor and Mary Landrieu and Kay Hagan and all the red state Democrats and Mark Begich. And listen, if you're running for re-election in 2014 in, say, Arkansas and Louisiana, and you get 10, 20,000, 50,000 calls from your constituents, I guarantee you that changes your calculus. But that won't happen until the Republicans stop shooting their own, until the Republicans unify first. And so our objective is very simple, which is get all the Republicans to do what they say they believe in, just to stand up for what they've been telling their constituents over and over again they believe in.
Well, it's so frustrating because the thing is such a disaster. And I think you made that point. All the delays, all the waivers, all the ways this thing's falling apart already. It doesn't deserve to be implemented just on the basis of competence.
Look, it's exactly right, and it makes no sense that there should be special rules, special exemptions from President Obama for his buddies, for the rich and powerful and connected, for big corporations, and members of Congress. They get exempted, but not hardworking Americans.
Yeah, Congress is going to get subsidized, Office of Personnel Management.
Yep, and that's Washington in a budget, which is rules for thee, but not for me. We get special treatment. You know, Dick Durbin came on the Senate floor and said, look, our health care is first class. We want to stick people back in coach. I don't think members of Congress ought to have better treatment than the American citizens who are losing their health insurance because of Obamacare, who are being forced onto exchanges that aren't working.
Well, it was really stunning. I forget the exact day, but I see this story that said that congressional and Senate staff, both parties, were complaining that what they earn, which is six figures, that they couldn't afford it without the subsidy. So They make more than far more than the national average. It left me speechless. They were, we can't afford this. You wrote it. What do you mean you can't afford it?
And that's why I support David Vitter's amendment to make every member of Congress, every congressional staff, every federal employee, including Barack Obama, subject to Obamacare. Now, they will hate that. And listen, my goal ultimately is not to put them under Obamacare. It's for them to say, well, gosh, if you hate that, how about exempting the American people, too? If it's miserable for you, don't make it happen to the American people. But the worst outcome is to subject the American people to this failed health care law and exempt the Washington ruling class. That's why the people are so frustrated with Washington.
Well, I'd say I think if more people knew that, it reminds me of the House bank scandal in 1988 and 89. That was so easily understood. So is this. If more people understood that whatever is going to be the law of the land for them, Congress has exempted themselves from it. That, to me, is if more people could be made aware of that alone, which has been an effort here. Look, you had a third thing that you wanted to say. You had 3 points you wanted to say in closing.
The three were: one, mentioning reading your dad's wonderful essay; number two, sign up at don'tfundit.com; and number three, light up the phones to your senators. Okay. It's all this week.
Well, Senator, I thank you again for your time. Real pleasure. Honor to have you here, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. What's next for you? You've got Senate activity all afternoon. When do you get some rest?
Keep fighting this fight. We had a vote. I'm actually going to go and try and get a little bit of shut eye, and then return, hopefully, with the strength to keep fighting as right up until the vote. I'll confess I'll take a little bit of sleep and then be right back in the trenches.
Would you prefer this vote Friday or Saturday? Does it matter?
I would rather it Friday, and the reason is, I want the American people paying attention to it. And I think Friday afternoon is a great time to capture the American people. Saturday, people are watching football. People are distracted. I think the Democrats and a fair amount of Republicans would like it Saturday because they don't want the American people engaged. I want to pick the maximum time for the maximum number of Americans to follow exactly what's happening and know exactly where every senator votes.
Pretty comprehensive. Well, there you have it. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, thank you again, sir, and all the best.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you.
We'll be back, folks.